Hi everyone, this is eNormous with TekDefense, and today we're going to talk about HoneyDrive on TekTip, episode 18. Alright everyone, so as I mentioned in the intro here, today's video is going to be on HoneyDrive. For those of you who don't know what HoneyDrive is already, it is a collection of Honeypot software and tools put together by our friends over at BruteForce Labs into a single source. So what we've been saying, as Backtrack is the offense and the security onion is the defense, Honeypot is the premier distro for, or HoneyDrive is the premier distro for Honeypot software. So what does it include? It includes so much stuff. So what I'm going to try to do today is cover as much of that as possible. I'm going to try to do it very quickly so I can get it all into one video, but I may need to split this up into two parts. I'm not quite sure yet. But first, let's cover a little bit about what's in the toolset and installation. So as you can see, I've done a pretty thorough review on HoneyDrive over at TekDefense if you want to see a text version of what we're going to go over. But just using this as our guide here, the main Honeypot software that you're going to see in here is Kippo, Honeyd, and Dionaea, which is the successor to Nepenthes. I'm probably saying that wrong, but you can see it here in text. In addition to that, here are some of the other Honeypot software that is also here on the tool set. So Sticky Honeypot, Tiny Honeypot, Emulator, which is actually just an extension script for Honeyd, InetSim, which we've talked about in our malware analysis videos, and SimH. So in addition to all of these cool tools, they also include some of the add-ons that BruteForce Lab had created themselves, such as Kippo-Graph, Kippo2MySQL, Honeyd2MySQL, Honeyd-Viz. What these allow us to do is get some visualization to these honeypots that we're putting out there. So it'll graph out your top connections, the top passwords people are hitting on, top commands they're using once they connect to your Kippo instance, and so on and so forth. In addition, we have a lot of other tools included with the tool set, and this is just a sampling of them. You'll notice Automator is on the list here. So we actually made this distro, or our tool made it onto this distro. So awesome. Really happy to have Automator out there where other people can use it. And then of course it has some other extra add-ons for Firefox and some of your normal OS stuff. So let's talk about installation real quick. So rather than walk through this, let me just show you real quick. And I believe I have it up somewhere. Give me a second. And we'll go with there. Alright, so when you go to the SourceForge site for HoneyDrive, you'll be able to download the OVA and of course the README for HoneyDrive. As you can see, we're at 0.1, which is the Santa edition. This was released on the day after Christmas. And OVA, for those of you who haven't used it before, if you're using VirtualBox, and I'm not sure how this works with other software because I use VirtualBox specifically. If you double click it, it is a machine importer, right? So now it's going to bring up your normal VirtualBox manager, and it's going to import these settings based on what BruteForce Labs configured for HoneyDrive. So very simple. If you like the defaults, accept them. If not, you can modify them a little bit. And then import. When you click import, that's going to bring the machine in. As you can see, HoneyDrive desktop Boot2. So it'll bring it in just like this, and then you can manipulate it some more if you want to. I up the memory on it. I upped it to 1 gig, which not necessary, but if you have the extra memory RAM to throw at it, by all means go ahead. And of course, after you import it, you just start it up via the normal methods, and that is what you see here. So what we're looking at is the HoneyDrive instance. So your default login and password are in the README, but you can also see it here on the desktop. README is something very important to take a look at because it includes the location to everything that you're going to need to use. So here is your actual username and password. Of course, the first thing you should do when you get on here is change that. Right, so pass WD and then change that password to whatever you need to change it to. Here's a little bit more information about the system itself, what it's run on. And additionally, in this README file, you're going to see pretty much where all the important files exist, and the username and passwords to the different databases and so on. One of these was wrong, so let me bring that up real quick so you can see. All right, so put a D and a D in here. He's updated that already on the main download, but if you got the download before he updated it, the directory was wrong here and the database username was wrong there. Or the database was wrong there. So just add the D and you're fine. Alright, so that covers the installation. I didn't show you, but you can actually go to BruteForce Labs and SourceForge page. This is where you can download it. So click download and then it'll bring you to the link to download the files that you want to download for this, which of course would be the OVA and the README. Alright, so I'm going to pause this for a second, and then when I come back, we're going to talk about Kippo. Alright, so now we're back, and now we're going to talk about Kippo. I did a TekTip episode, I believe it was episode 13, maybe 11, on Kippo. So if you want to see the full details of what Kippo is, and how to use it, and how to manipulate it to better suit your needs, check out that video. But I'll go over the basics here again, just to make sure you understand what we're doing. So Kippo is a medium interactive SSH honeypot. What this means is it's going to listen on SSH, and you can give it a port, but by default, obviously, it'll be 22. And when an attacker connects to what seems to be an open SSH port, it will and put in the appropriate username and password combinations, which you can configure, but by default are root 123456 as the password. They will be presented with what looks like to be an interactive Linux shell, when in all actuality they're just getting an emulated shell where we can kind of trap them and watch them and see what they're doing. In addition to this, we can also replay exactly what they do back to us in a way where we can see exactly what they are typing, they hit backspace, whatever. Additionally, we can let them do things like wget, so they can download their exploits, their malware, whatever they're trying to do, but we won't let them launch it. So we get a copy of their stuff, but they don't have the ability to run it within our network. Now, there are some ways for an attacker to find out if they're in Kippo, and I won't bother going over them here, but for the most part, this will confuse most people. So here in the README, you can see where all the important files reside. This is where we started up. This is the download file, so if they do download any of their exploits or malware, this is where it'll go. The TTY logs, this is where their session information is stored. So if we want to replay their session, we go here and use the replay functionality. And these are the credentials in userdb.txt that Kippo will accept as valid username and passwords. So you can put as many different username and password combinations as you want there. Additionally, we have the MySQL information and the Kippo-Graph and Kippo2MySQL stuff. So this all here is part of what Honeybox really brings to the picture for us, which is great. We have Kippo, but there's all these other neat tools and scripts for Kippo that we want to be able to use. Well, they're already installed and working out of the box here, and these are the different informations for those. So to start Kippo, we're already in opt-Kippo, as you can see. Let's make this a little bigger for you guys. There we go. So we're in opt-Kippo. To start it, /start.sh. Do not sudo this because it can't run as root, but it can run as a normal user. So .start, /start.sh. I already have it running, so it's going to give me an error. I think I might make it too big there. There we go. Yeah, so I already have it running, so it's going to give me an error, so you can't. But if you didn't have it running, that's how you start it. And that's it. I mean, you start it up, and it's going to use the configs that it already has loaded to try to trick a user. Just to give you an example of what may happen. So here's my Backtrack 5 box. Actually, I should probably check what IP I am. So if config and 1.11. Alright, so let's go back to Backtrack. And so if I just do SSH root at 2.168.1.11, sure, I accept that fingerprint. And now it wants me to put a password. Now I know the default password is 123456, so I'm going to put that in there. And now it looks like I have connected to an SSH daemon for a web server. So if I do, what people normally do when they get in these things, right? Oh wow, let's see what's in the host.deny. Did I type that wrong? Host.deny. Oh, hey, it doesn't exist. So let's check out passwd. Okay, there's some usernames and password, or username information that we want to pay attention to, and the permissions and so on. But then they're going to do all this stuff. I'm not really concerned with that right now, so we're just going to close it out. Just wanted to give you an example of what it looks like from the attacker side when they get in there. Now you can replay all that stuff here. But the power of this, again, is what they've added here. So by converting the Kippo logs, the text logs, into MySQL, we can now utilize some graphing visualization tools, which BruteForce has put together for us. So once you generate some traffic on your box, SSH traffic going to that honeypot, go to localhost /Kippo-Graph index.php, and you're going to be presented with this home page. It does not automatically generate the graphs for you, so the first time you do it, and every time the information updates, you want to go ahead and click generate the Kippo graphs, and it's going to generate them for you. So now that it's generated, you get some nice, let's try to make this bigger as well, you get some nice graphs about what Kippo saw. So out of all the times that I've been playing with this honeypot, from here to here, I've used a password of TekDefense 6 times, ABC123 3 times, password 2 times, noob 2 times, gibberish 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? So those are the times or the passwords I've put in. Here are the usernames that I've tried to connect with, right? So this gives us a better idea of what's going on. And then here are the user and password combinations that I've tried. And of course, this gives it in a nice pie chart versus the bar chart here. It shows me how many times it was successful versus failure. Successes per day, per week. Now, obviously, this would look a lot better if I had done this over the course of several days. But you kind of get the deal here. These are people there, the unique IPs involved, successful logins were from where, so on and so forth. These are the clients that were used. Oh, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold today, so I might sound a little rough. So that's Kippo-Graph, but in addition we get Kippo input. So now we can see what commands were typed. Right, so what were the top commands that were involved? ls, etc, cat pass wd, startx, host.deny, yeah, so on and so forth. So really good information here. In addition, we have the geo portion, which would then try to establish what geographic location are these IP addresses from. So as these are private addresses, they're not going to show up on a map. But if I was connecting, or if I had this out live and people were connecting to this box, it would be much different, as we would be seeing their production IP addresses. Now he had some little functionality over here to look up some information on these tools, and you'll notice, and this is kind of the same stuff that we do with Automator. So if you want to use Automator, you can do that same type of thing, but it's going to look, if you want to see the rob text information for this IP, if you want to see the IP void information for this IP, you can do so. And then Graph Gallery is just all the graphs from all of those, where you can click on them and get a larger version of that graph. So that is what HoneyDrive brings to Kippo, but that's just one of the honeypots that this distro includes. So you can imagine, how much goes into all these different honeypots. So next we're going to talk about Honeyd, and I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and when I come back, that's what we'll do. Alright guys, now we're back, and we're going to talk about Honeyd a little bit. So Honeyd is a low interactive honeypot. Many of you probably played with it because it's also included on Backtrack. And it's kind of like the low interactive honeypot. Everyone uses this one. Why do people use it? It's because how flexible it is. It was created by Niels Provos, who I believe is employed by Google currently. But basically, what we can use Honeyd to do is emulate many different services. Kippo, specialized in SSH, while Honeyd can kind of do it all. And by default, it's not very powerful, right? We can tell it, hey, listen on this port and report back to the traffic that you get. But once we start adding some of these user-created extensions and scripts, we can now provide some of that simulated stuff that we were seeing, like in Kippo, making this almost medium interactive honeypot, versus low interactive one. So and you'll see, I believe actually down here, Emulator, right? Emulator is actually just a config for Honeyd that effectively emulates what IES would be to a user. So here is where all of your config files and important other files exist for Honeyd. Bin, obviously, this is where the executables reside. The config does what it sounds like. Some extra scripts that are lying around to help out, and the logs are supposed to go here to var log honeypot, Honeyd to MySQL. So unlike Kippo, this isn't all automated for you. You have to do a little bit of work with this one. I assume this is something he's probably going to, BruteForce Labs probably going to work on automating later on, or perhaps it already is automated and I'm just doing things wrong. But right now, you kind of have to run Honeyd. You need to tell it to log to this particular directory using a very specific file name, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Then you run Honeyd to MySQL to convert that log to MySQL, to the MySQL database, then you can go and run the Honeyd-Viz toolset. So let's get into it. So I guess I should first show you the config. So let's cd/etc and Honeypot. And you can see I have a few configs in here already. Honeyd4 is the one I'll be using for this example, so let's get into there. And you can see we have gedit. We could also use vi or whatever we want to use. So here's the basics of the Honeyd config. You create a template, so we're saying create template name, in this case I'm naming it Windows, and then you're going to give it a personality. The personality is based on Nmap personalities, and these names need to match the Nmap personalities. So make sure you do that. Here's what it is set for XP. And then we're going to set a default action for all TCP, and we can do this for UDP and ICP as well, to reset. So any connection that hits me, they're going to get a reset back. Now, you may not need to do this depending on how you have yours set up. For instance, the default config, Honeyd config, is set to work with a 10 network. I didn't want it to work with a 10 network. I wanted it to work by grabbing a DHCP address from my actual network. Now, this is how I'm doing that, how I'm getting it to use DHCP versus giving it a static address here. But that causes some other issues, right? Because I already have HoneyDrive set for DHCP. HoneyDrive has a MAC address. When I have this guy, my emulated Windows instance, grab a DHCP lease, it couldn't at first because it's using the same MAC address as my actual HoneyDrive box. So here, set Windows Ethernet, I'm just giving it a random MAC address so it doesn't get conflicted and it can get a DHCP address without issues. And then I just opened up a couple ports real quick just to show that this is how you open up the ports. Now, in more complex configs, I can then give it a script here to run, like for that IIS emulator. I could have it listen on port 80 and listen with this particular script or config. So this is what my really basic config looks like. To see others, let's go ahead and hop out of here, close without saving, and let's see. Let's go with, I guess we'll just go with the basic one. Honeyd.conf. And I should probably gedit this, right? Okay. So here we can start adding, routing information. So I didn't mention, but Honeyd I can emulate as many machines as my resources allow. So I can kind of emulate an entire network by setting up these different templates and then having them have different IP addresses. I can set up almost what looks to be from the outside an actual network. So this is how you can kind of make your own little HoneyNet without having to spend resources on creating actual virtual machines. Here we're just emulating what these machines would be listening on. So here's a more complex config, and as you can see, here's one where they're using a particular script. So on 80, it's going to use this script when a user tries to connect. So you can see this can get pretty advanced if you want it to be. So now that we know where the config is, I'm going to show you how to run it. So I have this over here. I've already typed the command in once, so walk you through what I'm doing here. So I'm running Honeyd and I'm putting the TekD flag because I don't want it to go into the background. I want it to stay where I can see it. If you're doing this for real, you're probably going to take that TekD out because you want it to run in the background. But for me, for troubleshooting purposes and to show you guys what's going on, TekD works great. Then I'm going to give it a file for its config, which I'm using that honeyd4 config, and then I'm going to tell it to log to this particular spot. So you need to do this as well, because by default, your Honeyd2MySQL script, the Perl script there, is going to look for this specific file, var/log/honeypot/honeyd.log. If you want to name this something else, you need to also edit that script. Otherwise, it's not going to grab the file. So let's go ahead and run this, and you can see it's doing what it needs to do, and it's listening. So now, if, let's bring up Backtrack again, and just run a quick and map SV, and it was 192.168.1.11 if I remember correctly. Oh, no, it's not 1.11. What IP address did I give it in the config? Alright, I'm going to pause for a second so I can look up what the IP address is, and I'll be right back. Alright, and I'm back, and I'm stupid. So, one of the other reasons for using this TekD is because when it grabs a DHCP lease, it's going to tell you the IP address that it grabs. So, 1.14 is the IP address, so let's go ahead and do that. So now you can see, holy cow, Honeyd is getting hit like crazy. Right? So nothing too special there. I'm going to go ahead and stop that nmap scan. Just wanted to show you, what it looks like from the outside and inside when you're scanning there. So let's go ahead and close that out. So as I mentioned before, now you have to run that Honeyd2MySQL script. So let's go to that location. So cd/opt, and where was it? Honeyd2MySQL. Yep. So as I mentioned before, I think you want to do that. Alright, since the README has been updated since the release. So let's check it out. Alright, so now to run this, before we run it, let's actually just show you what I was talking about before. So gedit Honeyd2MySQL. Alright, and you'll see this is the script that they wrote. And this is what I was talking about here. So the log file is set, statically. It's hard-coded to this. So if you want to change where the log file exists, go ahead and do so here. Additionally, if you want to use a different database other than the one provided, don't know why you would, because that's one of the beauty of this distro is it's all pre-configured. You could do that here. So there you go. That's the script itself. Now let's go ahead and run it. So // and go. So now it's grabbing the logs and inputting them into MySQL. Okay. Let's go ahead and now you can bring up, like Kippo had its own graphing function, Honeyd does as well. And you can see it looks very similar and it follows the same format. So like in the other one, we have to generate the Honeyd graphs. So let's go ahead and click that. Now when we click that, it's going to use that MySQL database to start making some charts for us. So it's going to give us some statistics on protocols used, the connections by the IP addresses involved. You'll see a couple multicast stuff in there. Connections per day, showing you that here. Number of connections per unique IP address, and I try to generate a decent amount of traffic from different things, so we would have some pretty charts, and so on and so forth. So I mean, I think you get the point. There's a lot of graphs that you need to check out. looks like this is probably trying to pull in all the ports. I should let BruteForce know about this one. Populating with lots of data. Alright, so that's there. Of course, we have the Honeyd Geo, which works the same way as the Kippo one does, and we have our same scripts or tools here as well to look at rob text or IP void information. And again, because I'm using private addresses, it's not going to be able to graph this out for me. At least not most of it. It will be able to get some of it actually from the multicast stuff. Alright, so that wraps up what I wanted to show you on Honeyd. I know this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to quickly talk about Dionaea, or however you say that, and then talk about the other tools involved. We'll do that in a moment. I'm going to head and pause here, and we'll pick it up in a second. Alright, so now we're back with Dionaea, or however you say it again. I think before short we'll just call it Dio. So here are where the important log files exist for this. So what is this Honeypot? Well, this one is used for specifically for collecting malware and exploits. If you have the malware analysis cookbook, I would definitely check out their section on this because it is awesome. They have a good write-up, and I believe they even include a few different scripts as well to help you get started with it. We're kind of running out of time here, so I'm not going to go into running this right now, but it's very simple. You just go to the bin location, / it, and it's running. Then you just need to throw some exploits at it, or wait for somebody else to, and collect the results. By default, this will all the information will be logged to MySQL database, which you can see. They've also BruteForce has included PHP White Admin, so that you can view that database information easier. And here is how that works. So localhost PHP White Admin, put in the username and password that they give you, and then as you actually start getting some information in here, it'll start populating records in here. And then you'll know, then you can click on those records to view them, or you can start manipulating the data here, or start building your own little visualization application based on the data in this SQL database, MySQL database. So that's how Dio works for this one. Definitely check out that. And to quickly go through the rest, let's go ahead and talk about Labria. Might be saying that one wrong as well. This is an IDS / sticky honeypot, or tar pit as some people call it. Basically, it's going to accept connections, and when an attacker tries to do a port scan on you, it's going to let those connections hang a bit, and it's going to try to slow it down and even stop it entirely. And you could read a whole lot about how that works. I included some links on the TekDefense site on the review I did. So check that out, and it'll link you over to some good stuff there. I should note that if not configured and run properly, this could cause some pretty serious damage on your network, depending on what network you're playing with it. So make sure you read up on it before you actually run it. Okay, Tiny Honeypot. Haven't used this one much, so I can't really speak much to it. I only just tried it the other day when doing the review, but it seems pretty decent. To run it, all I was doing was /thpot space the service that I wanted to emulate, such as FTP. So I'm sure you can do a whole lot more with it. The documentation I read on it seems like I can do a lot of stuff with Tiny Honeypot, very similar to the way I can do it with Honeyd. So check that out. Emulator we talked about already. InetSim. I believe back in my TekTip episode 3 or something, I covered InetSim as part of our malware analysis thing. But this, again, will emulate services. Very simple to run. Just /InetSim, and it's going to listen on the services that you have it configured to do so in the conf file. And why we use this in malware analysis is I can then run malware that's supposed to communicate with a device, say on port 80, a command and control server on port 80. It connects to that command and control server over a host name, so I can modify my host file to have it connect to 127.0.0.1:80, which would then have it hit the listener for InetSim, and then I can configure InetSim to send some information back if I want to. It's a very cool tool for doing that, and that can trick the malware into thinking it's talking to a command and control server, and then give you some more information that you wouldn't have been able to get, without a tool like that. So let's talk about some of the other tools in here real quick. Most of these you already know, so I'm not going to bother going through them actually. And same thing down here. Of course, shameless plug, Automator is in here, so if you want to run Automator, it's in opt/automator, and then you /automator. Give it a target, or just follow the help file, such as 11.11.11.11. Hit enter, and then it's going to run through, determine that's an IP, and look up any URLs associated with it, or any DNS names associated with that IP address. It'll show you any blacklist that it happens to be on, and give you some geolocation stuff and URL categorization, so on and so forth. Automator TekH, it's a help file that'll explain all the different options that you have available to you. So I rushed through that last part because we're getting really long. I'm still not sure, depending on how much I can edit this down, whether I'm going to be able to get it into one video or not. But we will see. But like always, you can hit me up at enormous@TekDefense.com. If you have any questions, go to TekDefense.com for more articles, and YouTube and Secure YouTube and everything else. In addition, you should definitely go and check out BruteForce Labs website and give them some love. Let them know how much you like HoneyDrive if you enjoy it. And that is it for the day. Thanks for listening, guys.